My very first Bible stories. The creation. In the beginning, there was nothing. Then God made everything. Light, said God, and light burst into the darkness. Water, land, said God, and seas and mountains appeared. Trees, birds, fish, he went on. God made all the plants and animals in the world. Finally, he made people. Then God was happy and he rested. Adam and Eve. The first people in the world were Adam and Eve. They lived freely in a wonderful land called the Garden of Eden. There was only one rule. Do not eat fruit from that tree, said God, pointing. But one day, a crafty snake tricked Eve into eating a fruit, which she shared with Adam. Now, God's friendship with people was damaged. He sent them out of the garden. Noah's Ark. People didn't love God like he wanted and were not treating one another nicely. So, God decided to flood the whole world. He warned a good man named Noah. Noah listened to God. He built a big boat called an ark. Then he led pairs of each animal into the ark and climbed aboard with his family. Then the rain came. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. The entire earth was flooded, but everything on the boat was safe. Then the rain stopped. Noah sent out a dove. When it came back with a leaf, he knew the flood was over. God promised never to flood the whole world again. He put a beautiful rainbow in the sky to remind us of his promise. Abraham and Abraham's family. Abraham and Sarah were too old to have children, but God made them a promise. Look how many stars there are in the sky, God said. That's how many people will be in your family. Soon, Sarah gave birth to a baby named Isaac. Isaac grew up and had children who had children who had children. God had kept his promise. The story of Joseph. Jacob gave Joseph a beautiful coat because Joseph was his favorite son. This made Joseph's 11 brothers very angry. They took Joseph's coat and sent him away to Egypt. Then they damaged the coat and gave it to their father. Jacob thought that Joseph had been eaten by wild animals. He was very sad. Joseph worked hard in Egypt, but he was sent to prison. There, God helped Joseph to explain people's dreams. The king of Egypt also had a dream, and only Joseph could understand it. There will be 7 years with lots of food, then 7 years with no food, Joseph explained. The king put Joseph in charge of Egypt. Joseph ordered lots of food to be stored. Later, when his brothers had no food, they came to Egypt, where there was plenty. They were amazed when they saw Joseph. Joseph forgave his brothers. Jacob arrived too, and they all lived happily in Egypt. The story of Moses. A new king in Egypt didn't like God's people. They were in danger. To keep her baby son safe, a mother laid him in a basket and left him at the edge of a river. A princess come down to the river to bathe. She found the baby and took him back to the palace. The princess named the boy Moses and raised him as her own child. While Moses grew up, the king treated God's people very badly. It made Moses sad. One day, God spoke to Moses from a burning bush. "I am going to give my people a wonderful new home," he said. Moses asked the king to let God's people leave Egypt, but he refused. So God made 10 terrible things happen. Finally, the king agreed. Moses led the people out of Egypt, but then the king changed his mind and sent soldiers after them. The people had to cross a sea to be safe. God made a path through the sea. The people followed Moses toward the beautiful land that God had promised. David and Goliath. "Who will fight me?" boomed a huge warrior named Goliath. He shouted for 40 days, but nobody was brave enough to respond. Then a young shepherd named David stepped forward. God had helped him fight lions to protect his sheep. David believed that God would help him again. Thwack! David beat the gigantic Goliath with just one stone from his sling. Jonah and the whale. God gave Jonah a job, but Jonah jumped on a boat and sailed away instead. God sent a storm to destroy the ship. "It's my fault," Jonah cried to the sailors. "Throw me into the sea." They did, and the storm stopped. Jonah nearly drowned, but God sent a whale to swallow him. Inside the whale, Jonah prayed for 3 days. The whale spat Jonah safely onto dry land. Then Jonah did as God has asked. Daniel and the lions. Daniel prayed to God every day. Some powerful people hated Daniel. They told the king to punish anyone who prayed to God. Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. Everyone thought he would be killed, but Daniel continued to pray and God kept him safe. The king was amazed. He made a new rule. Everyone should pray to God. The birth of Jesus. One day, an angel came to Mary. The angel told her, "You will have a baby. Call him Jesus. He is God's son, and he will be a king." Mary believed the angel and praised God. Before the baby was born, Mary and Joseph traveled to Bethlehem on a donkey. They searched for a place to rest, but there was no room for them anywhere. Finally, they found a stable. There, Jesus was born. Mary wrapped him in cloth and laid him in a manger. Animals gathered around, and shepherds came to see the new baby. God put a bright star in the sky to celebrate Jesus' birth. The wise men. Wise men from the east saw a bright star in the sky. They followed the star to Bethlehem. The wise men wanted to meet the baby born to be king. When they found baby Jesus, they bowed down and worshipped him. They also gave him presents of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Jesus feeds the people. Jesus did amazing things, so thousands of people came to see him. Jesus cared for all of those people. He didn't want them to be hungry, but all they had were 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Not nearly enough. Jesus prayed to God. Then something incredible happened. People ate until they were full, and there were even food left over. It was a miracle. Jairus' daughter. Jairus' little girl was very sick. Jairus believed Jesus could make her better, so he begged him to come home and help. Sadly, Jairus' daughter died before Jesus arrived. But when Jesus held her hand and said, "Get up, little girl," she did. She was alive again and everyone was happy. The Easter story. Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a young donkey. God had promised his people that their king would arrive this way. An important festival was happening, so the city was very busy. When the crowd saw Jesus, they laid branches and cloaks on the road and shouted praises to God. Jesus ate a special meal with his 12 closest friends, known as the disciples. He gave them bread and wine and said that he was going to die. In the end, it would be a good thing though, because God would forgive people for everything they did wrong. Judas, one of the disciples, was not loyal. He helped nasty people who wanted Jesus dead. Soldiers came for Jesus and put him on a cross. It was horrible, but Jesus chose to stay there. He died, but always trusted that God would take care of him. After Jesus died, his followers were very sad. A few days later, his friend Mary went to visit his tomb. She was shocked to find it empty. "Mary," said a kind voice. Mary turned around and saw Jesus. He was alive. Everyone was amazed that Jesus wasn't dead. He said to his disciples, "I am the king of the whole world. Go and tell people about me. I promise I'll always be with you." Then Jesus went up to heaven. The end.